Well, committed now, but not forever. The Coalition's been through a 6-hour counselling session at its party room meeting. The final policy position is one that locks the Coalition into supporting traditional marriage until the election. Freedoms on offer beyond that election, but what that looks like isn't entirely clear. It could be a free vote, it could be throwing it open to the people to decide, or to emphasise the hedging of the bets on this issue, there's the Prime Minister's own words. If you support the existing definition of marriage, he says the Coalition is absolutely on your side. But if you'd like to see change at some time in the future, the Coalition's prepared to make that potentially possible too.
There's no easy answer here. We haven't decided to embrace same-sex marriage. We certainly haven't decided to do that. In a subsequent term of Parliament, this is a matter that should rightly be put to the Australian people.
All I'd like to say tonight, because it's been a very long day, I think it was a great test of the Liberal Party to be able to have a robust discussion, a respectful discussion where everyone expressed their views.
Shouldn't be up to 220 odd politicians sitting here in Canberra making a decision on marriage. It should be for the people to make a decision.
Everyone had their fair go, and I think the Prime Minister did a fantastic job in summing up at the end, judging the mood.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad.
We have supported the traditional position. I think that's a good thing. We've kept faith with the electorate. I think that's a good thing. But there is the prospect of change.
It's a strategy to delay marriage equality, to push it off into the never-never.
After the next election, there will either be the opportunity for people to have a free vote, for there to be a plebiscite where there is a question put to the Australian people, or that there will be a referendum to change the Constitution.
A plebiscite is motivated by the same views and the same prejudices, which is he will do anything to block progress and anything to be yesterday's match.
Choices in this country. You either have Mr Abbott or you have marriage equality, but you can't have both.
When the history of this parliament is written, yesterday will be one of its darkest days. We saw a Prime Minister who failed to lead the nation into the 21st century. That's what we saw.
Do not underestimate the magnitude of this as a cultural shift. Never before in this country or anywhere until very recently has this been regarded as an appropriate cultural norm. 2-to-1 support for the existing position, but a disposition to put it to the people in the next term of Parliament, and what could be fairer than that?
So Warren Entsch is the man who started a movement that couldn't be stopped yesterday. His private members' bill was what triggered discussion in no fewer than 3 separate party meetings. Now, Mr Entsch will go ahead and introduce his bill to Parliament on Monday to allow for same-sex marriage, but it looks like that's as far as it goes. Warren Entsch says he's okay with that and has an eye on the day when a future Parliament passes same-sex marriage into law.
Now, at the end of the day, and people may accuse the Prime Minister of saying, no, the Prime Minister did not make the decision. The decision was made by all of those people in the room. Make no bones about that. But what happened out of that was clearly there was not enough, even if there was a free vote, there was not enough support in there to be able to support that legislation going through. Make no bones about that. And unfortunately, that's where the matter would have ended. What has come out of that, listening to both sides, has been a decision by the Coalition that the policy that actually restricted the opportunity for a free vote it is no longer going past this term of government. So going into the next term, this policy will be redundant. It will not be there. That is a very significant move in itself. The second one, of course, is they now are committed to having the people have a say. Now, there are lots of people that were opposed to the bill, but absolutely supported the right for people to have a say. And given the issue, They passionately believe this is a decision that should be made by the broader community, and I think that's a positive. And so we're working through, and I've spoken to the PM, he's agreed that I can be part of working through this to make sure that what we come up with will be something that can be put to the people there to allow that to happen, and they've committed to whatever the people's decision is will be then enacted in legislation. So there are some, and again, that was agreed. And I don't believe we would have got that if we'd have taken it to the vote and had a free vote and lost. There is no way in the world, I believe, we would have got those concessions. It would have been the end of it. So I think we need to look at it in that context. And yes, it's going to take a little longer, but it would have, I believe, if the free vote had been enacted. So I want to say thank you very much to all of my colleagues, all of them that participated in it. And I think if we can conduct that type of discussion across a whole broad range of views in the public arena and across all other sectors, then I think we'll be a better society for it.
Now, it's no secret that Conservatives in the Liberal Party had planned, strategised and gauged the numbers well ahead of Warren Entsch's move to raise gay marriage at yesterday's meetings. The South Australian Senator, Cory Bernardi, was in the thick of all of that activity and that organisation. He's been speaking to our reporter, Jane Norman.
Well, I've been a passionate advocate for maintaining the status quo, that marriage is between a man and a woman, and I've also said that it's very important to the Liberal Party and the Coalition to have a firm policy position in this regard. But other than that, I'm just one advocate. I have one voice in the party room, and I'm delighted that my colleagues have seen the wisdom of that suggestion.
Did you and your Conservative colleagues organise to bring this issue of same-sex marriage to a head yesterday during the party room meeting?
Well, Jan, I think we have to get some facts very clear. It was initially raised by Warren Entsch, an advocate for change, who said he wanted to have a discussion on the free vote. And, you know, these things, you can either allow them to drag on and, you know, the hemorrhaging starts and lasts a long time, or you can deal with them and cauterise whatever open wound is there. And, you know, the determination was made by the Prime Minister. Let's deal with this, seen as how it was raised by the advocates. And in the end, everyone in the party room had their say, and an overwhelming majority of them thought that the Liberal Party should maintain its policy position.
It was raised by the advocates, but were they prepared for this issue to come to a head, for it to be debated, for a decision to be made on whether a free vote should be given to MPs?
Well, you should address that to them, but I would put to you that they've been talking about this for, you know, a year or more. If they weren't ready yesterday, when were they going to be ready? And if they weren't ready, why would they raise it? This is, you know, their tactics are not my problem.
Before yesterday's meeting, though, did you have any contact with the Prime Minister on this issue, whether to raise it or any of your senior Conservative colleagues? Well,
I don't want to be specific, Jane. You'll understand that in any communications I have with the Prime Minister. But for a long time, I've advocated the party needs to have a policy position. And we can't vacate the field and effectively have no position on marriage. I've communicated that to the Prime Minister through the media, like the ABC, through my, you know, communications at the National Press Club, and every time I see him, I tell him how important it is to our base.
Half the front bench, though, in last night's meeting voted for a free vote, so obviously that was defeated. But if you see any ministers or parliamentary secretaries from now on advocating a free vote on same-sex marriage, do you believe they should resign their executive positions?
Well, Jane, this is a matter of principle. Ultimately, the Cabinet and the front bench stand shoulder to shoulder on policy positions. Our policy position is that we believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and we're not going to change the Marriage Act. Now, I expect front benches to adhere to that. I've said that for nigh on 2 years when front benches have been breaking from our protocols. I think it's been ratified and reinforced yesterday. I hope there's temperance in this whole debate, but our policy position is absolutely clear, and I expect our front bench to adhere to it.
So that was Cory Bernardi on the successful side of the argument, but colleague from Queensland, Andrew Laming, took the opposite position. He was for a free vote, but in defeat, until the next election at least, he's copping it sweet. Andrew Laming's been speaking here with Julie Doyle.
This should have been a conscience issue. Menzies allowed it 3 times, issues similar to this. But in reality, in 2004, it became a party political position. It became part of our policy, and that does remove the ability to have a conscience vote.
Doesn't that, though, given you were such a strong supporter of a free vote, is there any element at all of disappointment in the way this played out?
There could have been, but 2 things have mollified that. Firstly, I've polled my electorate exhaustively. I've done everything I can to get the view of my electorate, and there isn't a significant majority, or in fact a majority wanting changes to the Marriage Act. Secondly, a very important intervention came from Julie Bishop, where a number in the leadership group suggested a free vote for the Australian people in the next parliamentary term. That is an extremely attractive option. We do need to wonder, even though the Marriage Act is something politicians have control over, why all Australia shouldn't have a say.
Let's talk a little bit about the process yesterday, though. We've been told from MPs describing it as messy. Were you caught off guard by the way this all came about yesterday?
Look, precisely not. I think if you're a micromanager of the political system, it may look messy, but this is the Liberal Party at its best. It's what I love about being in this party. I'd hate to be in a party just surrounded by everyone who has exactly the same view on climate, on marriage equality. We simply reflect Australia's divided position. And of course, catering for both sides will be difficult. So in the end, it may be giving every Australian a vote in a plebiscite that is the way forward. That's what the Coalition is offering. Labor is determined to keep it within Parliament, among its members, closing out the Australian voters.
Why shouldn't the Parliament deal with this?
They could deal with it, but the reality is, regardless of who wins the next election, whatever that bill looks like will probably be tied up in the Senate for an entire election term again. Under the Coalition, you get that direct vote. Every Australian has their say, and I just sense as this permeates through the community, most will say, I'm prepared to wait a year to get my own say.
It's not quite as cut and dried as that, though, is it? We heard the Prime Minister saying maybe a plebiscite, maybe some kind of constitutional referendum, that the position they will come to later. So what's your understanding of the process from here?
I think everyone's a little vague on it, but it was a very, very impressive intervention by Julie Bishop and a number of others. In effect, we'll have to talk about that, and if people don't like the methodology, we will pay at the ballot box. But I think there is a credible way forward for the Coalition, giving Australians a say on this sensitive, moral, faith-based issue that so many people feel strongly about. But ultimately, if I poll my electorate, only about a quarter will ever respond. So I can't truly divine the results, and I need to ask everyone, a plebiscite's the way to do it.
You just mentioned there it's a little bit vague at the moment. Is this putting this off now down the track, leaving this issue unresolved?
Well, yes, but ultimately we are responsible for our own future at the next federal election, and between now and then I think a path will be mapped out that has to be credible. It has to be time limited. I would like to see it within the first 12 months of the new parliamentary term. I think that would offer clarity. I'm increasingly attracted to this option because Labor will not offer it to the Australian people, which further begs the question why they won't.
So we're trying to skip across the spectrum of voices involved in this debate today. Now, parliamentary secretaries are treated as if they're ministers when it comes to the principle of solidarity around rules. They have to hold the policy line or risk losing their job. Well, Simon Birmingham is one who's publicly in favour of a free vote. Well, Simon Birmingham, take us to that lengthy meeting yesterday and into last night, your own speech. What were some of the points that you conveyed to the party room, and which I think you've made public anyway?
Yeah, look, my position on this has been very clear for more than 5 years since I first advocated for a free vote position and indeed outlined my position on the substantive issue of marriage equality. Now, in the end, the discussion was a constructive one from all parties. I, of course, argued my case, as did everybody else in that room. More than 40% of Liberals in the room argued for a free vote, which was welcome and very encouraging. And most pleasingly of all, the Prime Minister made a very clear commitment at the end that this will be the last Parliament in which there is a binding position for Liberal MPs.
And so what do you take out of that? Are you calling that a win for yourself and like-minded people, or unsatisfactory, something in delay now?
I'm very pleased that from the next Parliament onwards, we can have confidence that Liberal MPs on this issue can exercise their conscience, their free will, in whatever way it is determined in future. And that is a very positive outcome, and I welcome that sense of a compromise from the Prime Minister, in a sense, to recognise that there was a strong position from many people that in this Parliament we should stick with what has been Liberal Party policy but that ultimately this is the type of issue that should be a free vote, a conscience vote, and that's what will happen in future.
If you were asked to vote in this Parliament, in the Senate, for same-sex marriage, and there is talk in the building today that efforts are being made to bring this sort of thing on, are you comfortable to vote against it and adhere to the party position adopted last night?
I'm a team player, and I'll always be a team player in that sense, and I think people need to respect and recognise the fact that a big step forward was taken last night, and we now have a situation where the Liberal Party is moving towards a free vote on this issue, at the same time as the Labor Party is moving away from a free vote on this issue.
This is far from resolved, though, isn't it? I mean, the Prime Minister was saying that discussions can now be held in the lead up to the next election around the alternatives, which are a plebiscite, a uniform free vote across the party. Does that debate start now, and does that get messy for the party?
Look, I think there are two different issues here. So there's the issue about whether or not the party has a policy position. And what's been accepted is that for the life of this Parliament, we stand by the policy position. In the next Parliament and beyond, it is accepted as a matter of conscience for individual members. There is a separate question of process around achieving marriage equality and how that occurs, and that of course could be done by legislation still, it could be done by a plebiscite, means these are matters that are up for debate now and up for consideration. And I look forward to the advocates arguing their case around this and hearing the public's reaction to those ideas.
What's your own attitude towards a plebiscite, or even we're hearing suggestions of a referendum? How do you think they might work?
Well, I'm always very willing to hear the views of the people, and I think I really want to encourage Australians to have their say on the idea of a plebiscite. It obviously has the upside of giving people a free and open vote and a say in this matter, but it comes at cost and would be a major national debate, and people may think that this is still a matter the Parliament should resolve. I want to hear the views of Australians on that.
Your own inclination, though, seems to be towards just letting Parliament settle it. Is that correct?
Look, I haven't given, until it came up yesterday by a few people in the party room, much consideration to the idea of a plebiscite. It's never been seriously on the agenda in Australia before, so I'd rather go and listen to my constituents.
And reflecting on the day yesterday, the Prime Minister said, I had to make a call, and I think this is the best call given the long and full debate. That's in landing the result that we're discussing today. Are you satisfied with the calls that he made and this kind of hybrid position, holding position that's now been adopted?
Look, I didn't get, and people of my opinion in this debate didn't get everything we wished for yesterday, but we took an enormous step forward, and I think the Prime Minister's handling of it in that sense is to be applauded, that he has recognised this will be a free vote in the future.
And his authority within the party?
I don't think that's in any question at all.
Simon Birmingham, thank you.
Pleasure.
And just in case it had been implied that he might have been a mere parliamentary secretary, Simon Birmingham is, of course, a fully fledged minister, the Assistant Education Minister of this nation. Well, if nothing changes, all party positions on marriage should now be locked in for the next election. Labor's approaching that poll as a virtual plebiscite on same-sex marriage. Here's its Deputy Leader, Tanya Plibersek. Well, Tanya Plibersek, among the many options that the Coalition Party Room threw up last night, one could see a pathway towards the Australian people determining what happens with same-sex marriage. Is that at least to be applauded?
No, I think it's an expensive delaying tactic. This is a ridiculous proposition from a desperate Prime Minister. We make really important decisions in the Parliament every day of the week. Just yesterday, the debate started again about whether we would go from a 10% to a 15% GST rate. Is the Prime Minister going to take that to a plebiscite, or his pension cuts, or his $100,000 university degrees? I think it's a sign of desperation and another delaying tactic, because we know from a variety of surveys that the majority of the Australian population support this. And I think in effect the next election is a plebiscite on this issue, because Bill Shorten says within the first 100 days of a government he would lead, there would be legislation for marriage equality.
But if you accept that there is a degree of division in the broader community, what's wrong with getting some sort of binding expression of that community view?
Yeah, look, it's not that I would oppose a plebiscite, I just think it's a wasteful a waste of taxpayers' money, so it'll cost millions of dollars, and I think it's a delaying tactic from the Prime Minister. I think there's a clear degree of community support for this. And what is it about our Parliament that makes us incapable of deciding this one thing when we decide critical things every single day of the week?
You talk about delaying procedures, but Labor's almost got one of those themselves, don't they, as far as I think your preferred position was that it be bound in support of same-sex marriage, but that's been delayed for several years hence.
I think the internals of the Labor Party are kind of irrelevant at the moment. What's happened is that the Prime Minister has knocked on the head a proposal to allow his members a conscience vote on the issue of marriage equality. We know that there are 2 bills before the Parliament at the moment. If they were voted on tomorrow, this legislation would pass. There are enough people in the Labor Party and enough people in the Liberal Party to pass this legislation tomorrow.
Enough people in the Liberal Party prepared to, what are you saying, cross the floor?
No. If there was a free vote in the Liberal Party, there would be enough people in the Liberal Party and the Labor Party together to pass this legislation tomorrow. And we also have said very clearly that within the first 100 days of a newly elected Shorten government, Bill would introduce a bill for marriage equality that I would second. There are, no point in talking about the never never with the ALP. This could happen tomorrow if Tony Abbott got out of the way.
OK, well, let's talk about at least one of those bills, which is the Warren-Ench one. Is there anything Labor can do to get through the intricacies of procedure and committee selection processes to try to get that to a vote?
Well, I think that we do very seriously need to look at the standing orders to see whether we can bring on a vote on the Ench bill or on a bill like it in the Senate. I think there is a strong feeling and demand in the Australian community for this issue to be resolved sooner rather than later. I think the message from last night to the Australian community out of the Liberal and National Party room, a lot of people would have heard that refusal to have a vote on this issue as a message to gay and lesbian Australians that they're second-class citizens and that their relationships are second-class relationships. And I don't want that sentiment to stand in the Australian community. I want same-sex attracted teenagers to understand that their government and their nation accepts them as they are for who they are. So I think bringing a discussion into the Parliament sooner rather than later is critical.
OK, so sooner could mean Monday because that's when Warren-Ench is going to speak to his bill and introduce it. What sort of options might Labor consider to bring on a debate or expedite one that day?
Well, we have to look carefully at the standing orders and see whether there is the possibility of bringing on a vote and to have that discussion. But I really do think that there are people of goodwill in the Liberal Party who have said that they are considering crossing the floor. We do have to support them in that effort. It's a very brave thing to do, and I know it puts them in a very difficult position, but we heard reports from the party room, Liberal and National Party rooms last night, that there are people considering doing that, and we want to support them in that brave effort.
And in the expectation that were some of them to come over and support same-sex marriage, you would still lose anyway in the House of Reps?
Well, look, I can't tell you how many people in the Liberal Party room would be prepared to do such a brave thing. I don't know.
But you'd want to make the point that they had crossed. Is that part of the endeavour in trying to bring this on for a debate?
Well, I think they deserve the dignity of being allowed to express their very firmly held views. They've taken a lot of political risk to make their case. There was obviously a 6-hour debate last night in the Coalition Party room. That means that there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about this. We know from, we believe from reports that about 16 members of the front bench would vote for marriage equality, or for a conscience vote at least. We know that a large number of Liberal backbenchers would vote for marriage equality. I think this issue's come to a head now, and trying to cram it back into its box, as Tony Abbott is doing, I think really devalues the issue itself. It sends a very negative message to gay and lesbian Australians, and I think it's going to be a very difficult political thing for him to do. The Prime Minister said that he's prepared to adopt tricky tactics to stop this happening. Well, I think that there's a real potential that he'll face a backlash in his own party for that.
All right, well, some fascinating days ahead on that issue. Tanya Plibersek, thank you.
Thank you.
And just to wrap things up, there's one final perspective we haven't brought you, but one that is important nevertheless, and that's the Nationals. The Nationals block of 20-odd votes wasn't pivotal, but it was very important in the discussions at the Coalition party room yesterday. Victorian MP Darren Chester is one of only a few in his party who supports gay marriage, but he accepts the compromise that may now give the Coalition a way forward.
This is an issue where the Prime Minister himself has said, decent people can agree to disagree. And there were decent people in the room yesterday disagreeing with one another in a respectful and moderate manner. And at the end of the day, the Prime Minister evaluated the position of the room, and accurately he evaluated the majority supported leaving the Marriage Act where it is right now. Personally, I supported a conscience vote, and I want to vote yes for same-sex marriage in the future. I won't get that opportunity straight away, but I think at some stage, in the not-too-distant future, the Australian people will get a chance to have their say. Well, I think our nation's on a journey on this issue and people will change their minds over time. I've changed my mind and I believe some of my colleagues may well change their own minds in the future. I'm not pushing them into that position. I'm very respectful of their views as they stand today. I'm just arguing my case in a very respectful and moderate manner because I believe the Australian people want us to change our position, and I'll argue for a plebiscite in the next term of government.